It was Thursday, the 9th of June, 1904, in the northern quarter of Berlin in Germany. The morning had broken grey and close, with clouds that held the city's coal smoke low over the rooftops. On Ackerstraße, a long street of tenement buildings that housed the working poor, a girl named Lucie Berlin prepared for her school day. She was 9 years old. Her father, Frederick, worked as a cigar maker in one of the city's manufactories. The wage was poor. The family occupied rooms on the third floor of number 130, where the walls were thin and the corridors smelled of cabbage and carbolic. Lucie left the flat shortly before 8 o'clock that morning. She wore a dark brown dress with a black apron tied at the waist, white stockings, and red ankle boots that her mother had purchased second-hand the previous winter. Around her neck hung a small gold medallion on a delicate chain. She attended the local school, returning each day at 11. Her mother, Thea, expected her. The child was obedient and helpful, well-mannered in her speech, and popular among the other children who lived along that crowded street. By 11 o'clock, Lucie had returned home. She greeted her mother and went outside briefly to play in the courtyard. Within the hour, she came back indoors to help prepare the midday meal. Her father arrived home shortly after noon, as was his custom. The family ate together. Bread, perhaps, soup, a small portion of meat if the week's wages allowed it. By 1:45, Frederick had returned to the manufactory. The day proceeded as it always did. It was the last ordinary day the Berlin family would know. Shortly after her father departed, Lucie asked her mother for the key to the communal toilet. The facility was located on the upper floor, shared among several families in the building. Thea Berlin handed the key to her daughter and told her not to linger or stop to speak with friends, as they had errands to complete that afternoon. Lucie took the key and left the flat. Her footsteps were heard ascending the stairs. The door to the toilet was heard to close. After that, there was silence. Time passed. Thea Berlin, occupied with clearing the table and washing the plates in the basin, did not immediately mark the minutes. But presently she realized that Lucie had not returned. She set down the cloth and went to the door. She called out for her daughter. There was no reply. She walked to the stairwell and climbed to the upper floor. The door to the toilet was locked. She knocked. She called Lucie's name. The building absorbed her voice and gave nothing back. Puzzled and beginning to feel the first stirrings of unease, Thea returned to the flat. She told her eldest son Bruno that his sister had gone and could not be found. Together they began to search. They walked through the dim corridors of the tenement, knocking on doors, asking neighbors if they had seen the girl. Some had not. Others thought they might have seen her earlier, but could not say when or where. The building was large, and many people passed through its halls each day. By mid-afternoon, the search had moved beyond the building. Mother and son walked the streets, calling Lucie's name. Other residents, hearing of the missing child, joined them. They searched the courtyards, the alleyways, the small shops where Lucie might have stopped. No one had seen her. No one knew where she had gone. The afternoon grew late. The light began to fade. Thea Berlin's concern had turned to panic. Her mind filled with thoughts of the street's reputation, of the men who loitered near the corners, of the women who worked in the shadows, of all the dangers that a city held for a child who had wandered from her mother's sight. When Frederick Berlin returned from the manufactory that evening, he found his wife in a state of distress. Upon learning that Lucie was missing, he joined the search immediately. Frederick Berlin and his son walked the streets for 2 hours, asking every person they encountered if they had seen a girl in a brown dress and red boots. They received no useful information. By nightfall, Frederick went to the police station and reported his daughter as missing. The duty officer recorded the details. Name, Lucie Berlin. age 9 years. Last seen Thursday, 9th of June, shortly after midday. Clothing, dark brown dress, black apron, white stockings, red ankle boots. Distinguishing features, gold medallion worn on a chain. The police distributed the description among the constabulary. The newspapers were informed. By the following morning, articles appeared in the Berlin press describing the missing child and appealing for information from the public. The case drew attention because Ackerstraße was known to be a street of contrasts. Many honest labourers lived there, struggling to provide for their families with dignity. But the street was also infamous for its criminal element. Pimps, prostitutes, petty thieves and drunkards were common. The tenement buildings housed thousands, all living in close quarters, and not all were of good character. Officers began questioning residents of the street. They interviewed dozens of people, many of whom were reluctant to speak. Some offered information. A pattern began to emerge from the witness statements. Several people reported having seen a man described as being in his 30s or 40s with a beard and a noticeable limp. He wore a straw hat and ill-fitting trousers. One witness claimed to have seen this man passing through the archway onto the street, holding the hand of a child whose description matched that of Lucie Berlin. Another witness stated that they had seen a man fitting the same description walking with a small girl toward Humboldtine Park, a location that in 1904 consisted of both recreational spaces and secluded, overgrown areas. The police noted these accounts. They sought to identify the man. They hoped that someone would come forward with a name. Meanwhile, the search continued. Officers walked the park and the surrounding streets. They questioned more residents. They examined the records of known offenders in the area. Lucie's parents waited. The newspapers published updates. The city, or at least that portion of it that read such news, waited to learn what had become of the child. Nothing more was heard for 2 days. On Saturday, the 11th of June, a fisherman working near the Weiden Dam Bridge noticed something floating in the Spree River. It was a bundle wrapped in blood-stained paper. He retrieved it with a pole and brought it to shore. Upon opening the wrapping, he discovered the torso of a young girl. The fisherman immediately contacted the police. Officers arrived within the hour. They examined the remains and the wrapping. The location suggested that the bundle had been disposed of somewhere between the Marshall Bridge and the Eisstag embankment, likely thrown from a bridge during the night. The police, using their recently introduced system of missing persons records, made a connection within less than an hour. The fragments of clothing found with the torso matched the description of Lucie Berlin's dress and apron. The discovery was reported to the investigating officers. Dr. Arthur Schultz, a forensic expert, was summoned to examine the remains. Police Chief Georg von Boris ordered that Frederick Berlin be brought to the mortuary to identify the body. Frederick Berlin arrived at the mortuary in the afternoon. He was shown the remains. Despite the condition of the body, he was able to confirm the child's identity by a small scar below her chest, a mark he had known since she was an infant. The identification was recorded. The remains were formally logged as those of Lucie Berlin, aged 9 years, resident of Ackerstraße. Dr. Fritz Strassmann, another respected forensic expert, performed a detailed examination. Through analysis of the stomach contents, he determined that Lucie had died approximately 1 hour after consuming her midday meal on the 9th of June. His findings revealed that the child had likely been assaulted and then suffocated, either by a pillow pressed against her face or by hands placed over her nose and mouth. The body had been dismembered after death. The manner of dismemberment, however, was unskilled and clumsy, suggesting that the perpetrator possessed no medical training or anatomical knowledge. The discovery sent alarm through the neighborhood. The police intensified their investigation. Officers returned to Ackerstraße and resumed questioning residents. They sought information about any person who might have had access to the building on the day Lucie disappeared, any person who had behaved suspiciously in the days since, and any person known to have a history of violence or criminal behavior. Several names were mentioned. The investigation began to narrow. The investigation soon turned toward a woman named Johanna Liebert. She was a prostitute who resided in the same building as the Berlin family, on the same floor. She had been arrested 3 days before Lucie's disappearance for insulting a customer during an altercation. She had been detained for 3 days and was released on the morning of the 11th of June. Upon her release, she returned to her flat on Ackerstraße. Shortly afterward, she received a visit from a man who introduced himself to another resident in the stairwell as a second-hand goods dealer named Theodor Berger. When questioned, Johanna Liebert stated that the man's name was not Theodor Berger, but Otto Lent, a man she had known for many years. The police, intrigued by the discrepancy, sought to locate Otto Lent. On the 13th of June, he was arrested. However, he was able to provide an alibi. An insurance agent testified that Otto Lent had been at his office until 2 o'clock on the afternoon of the 9th of June, the time when Lucie had disappeared. He was eliminated from inquiries. Attention returned to the man who had called himself Theodor Berger. Further investigation revealed that he was not a second-hand goods dealer. He had been living with Johanna Liebert for 18 years, not as her partner, but as her pimp. His criminal record was extensive. He had been convicted previously of property damage, public disturbances, grievous bodily harm, and theft. Officers noted that he was a man capable of violence. Witnesses came forward with statements. Several people recalled seeing a man matching Berger's description near the Berlin family's apartment on the day Lucie disappeared. He had a limp. He wore a straw hat. His behavior had been noted as suspicious. Combined with his proximity to the Berlin home and his criminal history, Theodor Berger became the primary suspect. He and Johanna Liebert were arrested and taken into custody. On the same day, a boatman working south of Plötzensee recovered additional remains from the river, a head and 2 arms. These were confirmed to belong to Lucie Berlin. Both suspects were interviewed. Theodor Berger maintained his innocence. He stated that he had been asleep in Johanna Liebert's apartment on the afternoon of the 9th and had not seen Lucie at all that day. His alibi was unconvincing. Under further questioning, inconsistencies emerged that only deepened the investigators' suspicions. Johanna Liebert told the police that when she returned home after her release from detention, she noticed that a small travel basket had gone missing from her apartment. She asked Theodor Berger where it was. He told her that he had gotten very drunk and had brought a woman back to the flat. Unable to pay her, he had given her the basket. When officers asked Berger to provide the woman's name or description, he could not do so. His vague answers raised further suspicion. On the 17th of June, the press reported that police were searching for a white travel basket, measuring 60 centimeters long and 50 centimeters high, in connection with the murder. A chemist named Paul Jeserich was engaged to search Johanna Liebert's apartment for traces of blood. He examined Berger's clothing and shoes, the kitchen sink, the drain pipe, all the knives, and portions of the wooden floorboards from the bedroom. Most items showed no signs of blood. Berger's clothing, however, showed faint blood spots, though the stains had been so thoroughly washed that they could not be analysed further. On the 26th of June, a boatman entered a police station with information. He had pulled a travel basket from the Spree River on the 11th of June near the Kronprinzen Bridge. He had been unaware of the investigation and had not connected the basket to the case until he read about it in the newspapers. The basket was examined. Small pieces of wrapping paper were found stuck to its sides. The paper closely resembled that used to wrap the dismembered body parts. Johanna Liebert confirmed that the basket was hers. Forensic experts examined the basket. Traces of blood were found. Wool fibers were discovered embedded in the weave. The fibers matched those from Lucie Berlin's clothing. The blood was tested using a method developed in 1901, which confirmed that it was human. The evidence linked Theodor Berger directly to the crime. He was formally charged with the murder of Lucie Berlin. On the 31st of July 1904, Lucie Berlin's funeral took place. Nearly 1,000 mourners gathered. The procession, featuring an open hearse accompanied by a marching band, wound through the streets from the Institute of Forensic Medicine to St. Elizabeth Cemetery. The newspapers reported the event in detail. The trial of Theodor Berger began on the 12th of December, 1904. It lasted 10 days. Nearly 1,000 witnesses were called to testify. The courtroom was packed with spectators. The Berlin press reported every detail, printing entire witness statements word for word. Public interest was intense. There were calls for Berger to receive the death penalty, though Germany had effectively ceased executions in most jurisdictions by that time. Thea Berlin testified. She recalled a conversation she had once had with her daughter. She had warned Lucie never to go off with strangers. The child had responded, "I am not stupid, mother." The courtroom fell silent as she spoke. Forensic evidence formed the core of the prosecution's case. Dr. Schultz explained the fiber analysis and the blood tests. He stated that the wool fibers from the basket matched those from Lucie's clothing and that the blood on the basket was human. The defense brought in their own experts who disputed these findings. They argued that the examinations had been inconclusive and that the common design of travel baskets meant it could not be tied definitively to the crime. They pointed out that no blood had been found in the apartment and that no witness had positively identified Berger with the child on the day she disappeared. Theodor Berger continued to deny all allegations. He compared himself to Christ standing before Pontius Pilate. His demeanor in court was noted by observers as defiant and unrepentant. After all witnesses had testified, the judge delivered his instructions. The jury retired to deliberate. Despite the complexity of the case, their deliberation was brief. They returned with a unanimous verdict, guilty of manslaughter. The judge sentenced Theodor Berger to 15 years of imprisonment, followed by 10 years of supervised probation. Berger was taken to prison. He served his sentence. Records show that he was released after completing his term, though the exact date is not documented. No further crimes were attributed to him. He faded from public record. The case of Lucie Berlin was widely reported at the time and drew attention to the dangers faced by children in working-class neighborhoods. The forensic methods used in the investigation, particularly the blood testing and fiber analysis, were noted as examples of modern scientific policing. Years passed. The name Lucie Berlin was spoken less frequently. The newspapers moved on to other tragedies. The building at 130 Ackerstraße continued to house the poor. Families came and went. The courtyard where Lucie had played on the morning of the 9th of June remained, worn smooth by the passage of many feet. The street carried on. Behind the windows, kettles boiled and doors closed. Beyond that, only silence.